Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. And a warm welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace, wherever you are. Faring well, I hope, in these very difficult days. The lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. That's where we belong, and that is the Yuga Dharma, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, chanted by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, creating a tsunami of bliss. And we are swimming in that bliss, getting real relief, tangible relief. I don't want to spend too much time in our introduction today because I want to go into the chapter we're into. It's so nectarian. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur offered his poetic glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam, not meant to be taken literally, but figuratively. As he stood up after ending a lecture in Munjer, an earth tremor caused mild flooding of the adjacent Ganga. The water soon receded, after which Srila Saraswati Thakur said, "In due course, Mahapralaya, devastating floods, will inundate the entire universe. If you attempt to survive by swimming in that deluge, then do not neglect to take hold of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. Or, if you cannot hold all three, then release Bhagavad Gita. If necessary, you may also relinquish Srimad Bhagavatam, but under no circumstances release your hold on Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. For if this one book remains, then the flood can do no actual damage, because after it has subsided, the message of Shastra can be revived from Sri Caitanya-caritämrta alone, it being the essence of all Shastra. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vinda. So we reached the 7th chapter of the Ädi-lilä, the glories of the Pancha Tattva, beginning with text 20. The characteristics of Krishna are understood to be a storehouse of transcendental love. Although that storehouse of love certainly came with Krishna when he was present, it was sealed. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with his associates of the Panchatattva, they broke the seal and plundered the storehouse to taste transcendental love of Krishna. The more they tasted it, the more their thirst for it grew. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is called Mahavadanyavattara because although he is Sri Krishna himself, he is even more favorably disposed to the poor fallen souls than Lord Sri Krishna. When Lord Sri Krishna himself was personally present, he demanded that everyone surrender unto him and promised that he would then give one all protection. But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to this earth with his associates, they simply distributed transcendental love of God without discrimination. Sri Rupa Goswami therefore could understand that Lord Chaitanya was none other than Sri Krishna himself, for no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can distribute confidential love of the Supreme Person. 22. Sri Panchatattva themselves danced again and again, and thus made it easier to drink nectarian love of Godhead. They danced, cried, laughed, and chanted like madmen, and in this way they distributed love of Godhead. Purport. People generally cannot understand the actual meaning of chanting and dancing. Describing the Goswamis, Sri Srinivasacharya stated, Krishnot kirtanagana nartana param. Not only did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates demonstrate this chanting and dancing, but the 6 Goswamis also followed in the next generation. The present Krishna consciousness movement follows the same principle, and therefore, simply by chanting and dancing, we have received good responses all over the world. It is to be understood, however, that this chanting and dancing do not belong to this material world. They are actually transcendental activities, for the more one engages in chanting and dancing, the more he can taste the nectar of transcendental love of Godhead. Text 23. In distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor where such distribution should or should not take place. They made no conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of the Panchatattva distributed love of Godhead. Purport. There are some rascals who dare to speak against the mission of Lord Chaitanya by criticizing the Krishna consciousness movement for accepting Europeans and Americans as brahmanas and offering them sannyas. But here is an authoritative statement that in distributing love of Godhead, one should not consider whether the recipients are Europeans, Americans, Hindus, Muslims, etc. The Krishna consciousness movement should be spread wherever possible, and one should accept those who thus become Vaishnavas as being greater than Brahmanas, Hindus, or Indians. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired that his name be spread in each and every town and village on the surface of the globe. Therefore, when the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is spread all over the world, those who embrace it not be accepted as Vaishnavas, Brahmanas, and Sannyasis? These foolish arguments are sometimes raised by envious rascals, but Krishna conscious devotees do not care about them. We strictly follow the principles set down by the Panchatattva. 24. Although the members of the Panchatattva plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead and ate and distributed its contents, there was no scarcity, for this wonderful storehouse is so complete that as the love is distributed, the supply increases hundreds of times. Purport. A pseudo-incarnation of Krishna once told his disciple that he had emptied himself by giving him all knowledge and was thus spiritually bankrupt. Hare Krishna. Such bluffers speak in this way to cheat the public, but actual spiritual consciousness is so perfect that the more it is distributed, the more it increases. Bankruptcy is a term that applies in the material world, but the storehouse of love of Godhead in the spiritual world can never be depleted. Krishna is providing for millions and trillions of living entities by supplying all their necessities. And even if all the innumerable living entities wanted to become Krishna conscious, there would be no scarcity of love of Godhead, nor would there be insufficiency in providing for their maintenance. Our Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handedly, and no one provided for our livelihood, but at present we are spending hundreds and thousands of dollars all over the world, and the movement is increasing more and more. Thus there is no question of scarcity. Although jealous persons may be envious, if we stick to our principles and follow in the footsteps of the Panchatattva, this movement will go on unchecked by imitation swamis, sannyasis, religionists, philosophers, or scientists, for it is transcendental to all material considerations. Therefore, those who propagate the Krishna consciousness movement should not be afraid of such rascals and fools. Text 25. The flood of love of Godhead swelled in all directions, and thus young men, old men, women, and children were all immersed in that inundation. Purport. When the contents of the storehouse of love of Godhead are thus distributed, there is a powerful inundation that covers the entire land. In Sridham Mayapur, there is sometimes a great flood after the rainy season. This is an indication that from the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, the inundation of love of Godhead should be spread all over the world, for this will help everyone, including old men, young men, women, and children. The Krishna consciousness movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so powerful that it can inundate the entire world and interest all classes of men in the subject of love of Godhead. 26. The Krishna consciousness movement will inundate the entire world and drown everyone, whether one be a gentleman, a rogue, or even lame, invalid, or blind. Purport. Here again, it may be emphasized that although jealous rascals protest that Europeans and Americans cannot be given the sacred thread or sannyas, there is no need even to consider whether one is a gentleman or a rogue, because this is a spiritual movement which is not concerned with the external body of skin and bones. Because it is properly conducted under the guidance of the Panchatattva, strictly following the regulated principles, it has nothing to do with external impediments. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai. Text 27. When the 5 members of the Panchatattva saw the entire world drowned in love of Godhead and the seed of material enjoyment in the living entities completely destroyed, they all became exceedingly happy. Purport. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya that since the living entities all belong to the marginal potency of the Lord, each and every living entity has a natural tendency to become Krishna conscious, although at the same time, the seed of material enjoyment is undoubtedly within him. The seed of material enjoyment, watered by the course of material nature, fructifies to become a tree of material entanglement that endows the living entity with all kinds of material enjoyment. To enjoy such material facilities is to be afflicted with the 3 material miseries. However, when by nature's law there is a flood, the seeds within the earth become inactive. Similarly, as the inundation of love of Godhead spreads all over the world, the seeds of material enjoyment become impotent. Thus, the more the Krishna consciousness movement spreads, the more the desire for material enjoyment decreases. The seed of material enjoyment automatically becomes impotent with the increase of the Krishna consciousness movement. Instead of being envious that Krishna consciousness is spreading all over the world by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, those who are jealous should be happy, as indicated here by the words Parama Ulas. But because they are Kanishta Adhikaris, or Prakrita Bhaktas, materialistic devotees, who are not advanced in spiritual knowledge, they are envious instead of happy, and they try to find faults in the Krishna consciousness movement. Yet Srimad Prabodhananda Saraswati writes in his Caitanya-caritämrta that when influenced by Lord Chaitanya's Krishna consciousness movement, materialists become averse to talking about their wives and children, Supposedly learned scholars give up their tedious studies of Vedic literature. Yogis give up their impractical practices of mystic yoga. Ascetics give up their austere activities of penance and austerity. And sannyasis give up their study of Sankhya philosophy. Thus they are all attracted by the bhakti yoga practices of Lord Chaitanya and cannot relish a mellow superior to that of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Text 28. The more the five members of the Panchatattva cause the rains of love of Godhead to fall, the more the inundation increases and spreads all over the world. Purport. The Krishna consciousness movement is not stereotyped or stagnant. It will spread all over the world, in spite of all objections by fools and rascals that European and American mlechas cannot be accepted as brahmanas or sannyasis. Here it is indicated that this process will spread and inundate the entire world with Krishna consciousness. Sri Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. 29 and 30. The impersonalists, fruitive workers, false logicians, blasphemers, non-devotees, and lowest among the student community are very expert in avoiding the Krishna consciousness movement, and therefore the inundation of Krishna consciousness cannot touch them. Purport. Like Mayavadi philosophers in the past, such as Prakashananda Saraswati of Benares, modern impersonalists are not interested in Lord Chaitanya's Krishna consciousness movement. They do not know the value of this material world. They consider it false and cannot understand how the Krishna consciousness movement can utilize it. They are so absorbed in impersonal thought that they take it for granted that all spiritual variety is material, because they do not know anything beyond their misconception of the Brahmajyoti. They cannot understand that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is spiritual and therefore beyond the conception of material illusion. Whenever Krishna incarnates personally or as a devotee, these Mayavadi philosophers accept him as an ordinary human being. This is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanamashritam param bhavamajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. There are also other unscrupulous persons who exploit the Lord's appearance by posing as incarnations to cheat the innocent public. An incarnation of God should pass the tests of the statements of the Shastras and also perform uncommon activities. One should not accept a rascal as an incarnation of God, but should test his ability to act as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For example, Krishna taught Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna also accepted him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But for our understanding, Arjuna requested the Lord to manifest his universal form, thus testing whether he was actually the Supreme Lord. Similarly, one must test a so-called incarnation of Godhead according to the standard criteria. To avoid being misled by an exhibition of mystic powers, it is best to examine a so-called incarnation of God according to the standard criteria. To avoid being misled by an exhibition of mystic powers, it is best to examine a so-called incarnation of God in the light of the statements of the Shastras. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is described in the Shastras as an incarnation of Krishna. Therefore, if one wants to imitate Lord Chaitanya and claim to be an incarnation, he must show evidence from the Shastras about his appearance to substantiate his claim. 31 and 32. Seeing that the Mayavadis and others were fleeing, Lord Chaitanya thought, I wanted everyone to be immersed in this inundation of love of Godhead, but some of them have escaped. Therefore, I shall devise a trick to drown them also. Purport. Here is an important point. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to invent a way to capture the Mayavadis and others who did not take interest in the Krishna consciousness movement. This is the symptom of an acharya. An acharya who comes for the service of the Lord cannot be expected to conform to a stereotype, for he must find the ways and means by which Krishna consciousness may be spread. Sometimes jealous persons criticize the Krishna consciousness movement because it engages equally both boys and girls in distributing love of Godhead. Not knowing that boys and girls in countries like Europe and America mix very freely, these fools and rascals criticize the boys and girls in Krishna consciousness for intermingling. But these rascals should consider that one cannot suddenly change a community's social customs. However, since both boys and girls are being trained to become preachers, those girls are not ordinary girls, but are as good as their brothers who are preaching Krishna consciousness. Therefore, to engage both boys and girls in fully transcendental activities is a policy intended to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. These jealous fools who criticize the intermingling of boys and girls will simply have to be satisfied with their own foolishness, because they cannot think of how to spread Krishna consciousness by adopting the ways and means that are favorable for this purpose. Their stereotyped methods will never help spread Krishna consciousness. Therefore, what we are doing is perfect by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for it is he who proposed to invent a way to capture those who strayed from Krishna consciousness. 1 minute. Text 33. Thus, the Lord accepted the sannyas order of life after full consideration. Purport. There was no need for Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to accept sannyas, for he is God himself, and therefore has nothing to do with the material bodily concept of life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not identify himself with any of the 8 varnas and ashramas, namely Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. He identified himself as the Supreme Spirit. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or for that matter, any pure devotee, never identifies with these social and spiritual divisions of life, for a devotee is always transcendental to these different gradations of society. Nevertheless, Lord Chaitanya decided to accept sannyas on the grounds that when he became a sannyasi, everyone would show him respect, and in that way be favored. Although there was actually no need for him to accept sannyas, he did so for the benefit of those who might think him an ordinary human being. The main purpose of his accepting sannyas was to deliver the Mayavadi sannyasis. This will be evident later in this chapter. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has explained the term Mayavadi as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the material conception of life. A Mayavadi is one who considers the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, to be made of Maya, and who also considers the abode of the Lord and the process of approaching Him, devotional service, to be Maya. The Mayavadi considers all the paraphernalia of devotional service to be Maya. Maya refers to material existence, which is characterized by the reactions of fruitive activities. Mayavadis consider devotional service to be among such fruitive activities. According to them, when Bhagavata's devotees are purified by philosophical speculation, they will come to the real point of liberation. Those who speculate in this way regarding devotional service are called kutarkikas, false logicians. Those who consider devotional service to be fruitive activity are called karmanishtas. Those who criticize devotional service are called nindakas, blasphemers. Similarly, non-devotees who consider devotional activities to be material are called pashandis, and scholars with a similar viewpoint are called adama paduyas. The kutarkikas, nindakas, pashandis, and adama paduyas all avoided the benefit of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement of developing love of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt compassion for them, and it is for this reason that he decided to accept the sannyas order, for by seeing him as a sannyasi, they would offer him respect. The sannyas order is still respected in India. Indeed, the very dress of a sannyasi still commands respect from the Indian public. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas to facilitate preaching his devotional cult, although otherwise he had no need to accept the fourth order of spiritual life. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. 1 minute. Text 34. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained in householder life for 24 years, and on the verge of his 25th year, he accepted the sannyas order. Purport. There are 4 orders of spiritual life, namely brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. And in each of these ashramas, there are 4 divisions. The divisions of the brahmacharya ashram are savritya, prajapatya, brahma, and brihat. And the divisions of the grihastha ashram are varta, professionals, sanchaya, accumulators, shalina, those who do not ask anything from anyone, and shilonchana, those who collect grains from the paddy fields. Similarly, the divisions of the vanaprastha ashram are vaikanasa, valakilya, audumbara, and penapa. The divisions of sannyas are kutichak, bahudak, hangsa, and nishkriya. There are 2 kinds of sannyasis, who are called dhiras and narottamas, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1:13, 26, and 27. At the end of the month of January, in the year 1432 Shakabda, AD 1510, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the sannyas order from Keshava Bharati, who belonged to the Shankara Sampradaya. Text 35. After accepting the sannyas order, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu attracted the attention of all those who had evaded him, beginning with the logicians. 36. Thus the students, infidels, fruitive workers, and critics all came to surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. 37. Lord Chaitanya excused them all, and they merged into the ocean of devotional service. For no one can escape the unique loving network of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was an ideal acharya. An acharya is an ideal teacher who knows the purport of the revealed scriptures, behaves exactly according to their injunctions, and teaches his students to adopt these principles also. As an ideal acharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu devised ways to capture all kinds of atheists and materialists. Every acharya has a specific means of propagating his spiritual movement with the aim of bringing men to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, the method of one acharya may be different from that of another, but the ultimate goal is never neglected. Srila Rupa Goswami recommends Tasmat kenapyapayena manak krishne nishevayet sarva vidhi nishedhasyur etayor eva kinkaraha. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1, 2, 4. An acharya should devise a means by which people may somehow or other come to Krishna consciousness. First, they should become Krishna conscious, and all the prescribed rules and regulations may later gradually be introduced. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we follow the policy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For example, since boys and girls in the Western countries freely intermingle, special concessions regarding their customs and habits are necessary to bring them to Krishna consciousness. The acharya must devise a means to bring them to devotional service. Therefore, although I am a sannyasi, I sometimes take part in getting boys and girls married, although in the history of sannyas, no sannyasi has personally taken part in marrying his disciples. Text 38. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in order to deliver all the fallen souls. Therefore he devised many methods to liberate them from the clutches of Maya. Purport. It is the concern of the acharya to show mercy to the fallen souls. In this connection, Desha Kala Patra, the place, the time, and the object should be taken into consideration. Since the European and American boys and girls should, in our Krishna consciousness movement, preach together, less intelligent men criticize that they are mingling without restriction. In Europe and America, boys and girls mingle unrestrictedly and have equal rights. Therefore, it is not possible to completely separate the men from the women. However, we are thoroughly instructing both men and women how to preach, and actually they are preaching wonderfully. Of course, we very strictly prohibit illicit sex. Boys and girls who are not married are not allowed to sleep together or live together, and there are separate arrangements for boys and girls in every temple. Grihastas live outside the temple, for in the temple we do not allow even husband and wife to live together. The results of this are wonderful. Both men and women are preaching the gospel of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Krishna with redoubled strength. In this verse, the words Sabha Nistarite Kare Chaturi Apara indicate that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to deliver one and all. Therefore, it is a principle that a preacher must strictly follow the rules and regulations laid down in the Shastras, but at the same time devise a means by which the preaching work to claim the fallen may go on with full force. Text 39. All were converted unto devotees of Lord Chaitanya, even the mlechas and yavanas. Only the impersonalist followers of Shankaracharya evaded him. Purport. In this verse it is clearly indicated that although Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted Muslims and other mlechas into devotees, the impersonalist followers of Shankaracharya could not be converted. After accepting the renounced order of life, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu converted many karmanishtas who were addicted to fruitive activities, many great logicians like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, nindakas, blasphemers like Prakashananda Saraswati, pashandis, non-devotees like Jagai and Madai, and Adama Paduyas, degraded students like Mikunda and his friends. All of them gradually became devotees of the Lord. Even the Pathans, Muslims. But the worst offenders, the impersonalists, were extremely difficult to convert, for they very tactfully escaped the devices of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In describing the Kashira Mayavadis, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has explained that persons who are bewildered by empiric knowledge or direct sensual perception, and who thus consider that even this limited material world can be gauged by their material estimations, conclude that anything that one can discern or by direct perception is but maya, or illusion. They maintain that although the absolute truth is beyond the range of sense perception, it includes no spiritual variety or enjoyment. According to the Kashira Mayavadis, the spiritual world is simply void. They do not believe in the personality of the absolute truth or in its varieties of activities in the spiritual world. Although they have their own arguments, which are not very strong, they have no conception of the variegated activities of the absolute truth. These impersonalists, who were followers of Shankaracharya, are generally known as Kashira Mayavadis, impersonalists residing in Varanasi. Near Varanasi, there is another group of impersonalists who are known as the Saranat Mayavadis. Outside the city of Varanasi is a place known as Saranata, where there is a big Buddhist stupa. Many followers of Buddhist philosophy live there, and they are known as Saranata Mayavadis. The impersonalists of Saranata differ from those of Varanasi. While Varanasi impersonalists propagate the idea that the impersonal Brahman is truth, whereas material varieties are false, the Saranata impersonalists do not even believe that the absolute truth, or Brahman, can be understood as the opposite of Maya, or illusion. According to their vision, materialism is the only manifestation of the absolute truth. Factually, both the Kashira and Saranata Mayavadis, as well as any other philosophers who have no knowledge of the spirit soul, are advocates of utter materialism. None of them have clear knowledge regarding the absolute or the spiritual world. Philosophers like the Saranata Mayavadis, who do not believe in the spiritual existence of the absolute truth, but who consider material varieties to be everything, do not believe that there are two kinds of nature, inferior, material, and superior, spiritual, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, neither the Varanasi nor Saranata Mayavadis accept the principles of the Bhagavad Gita due to a poor fund of knowledge. Since these impersonalists do not have perfect spiritual knowledge, cannot understand the principles of Bhakti Yoga, they must be classified among the non-devotees who are against the Krishna consciousness movement. We sometimes feel inconvenienced by the hindrances offered by these impersonalists, but we do not care about their so-called philosophy, for we are propagating our own philosophy as presented in Bhagavad Gita as it is, and getting successful results. Theorizing as if devotional service were subject to their mental speculation, both kinds of Mayavadi impersonalists conclude that the subject matter of Bhakti Yoga is a creation of Maya, and that Krishna, devotional service, and the devotee are also Maya. Therefore, as stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mayavadi Krishna Aparadi, all the Mayavadis are offenders to Lord Krishna. C.C. Madhya 17, 129. It is not possible for them to understand the Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, we do not value their philosophical conclusions. However expert such quarrelsome impersonalists are in putting forward their so-called logic, we defeat them in every respect and go forward with our Krishna consciousness movement. Their imaginative mental speculation cannot deter the progress of the Krishna consciousness movement, which is completely spiritual and is never under the control of such Mayavadis. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. What a purport. What a purport. We're at a perfect stopping place. Tomorrow we'll hear about how Lord Chaitanya passed through Varanasi. All right, here we are, back at that lovely time after hearing the nectarian Caitanya-caritämrta, and getting this rare opportunity to buzz among the devotees, the bumblebee-like devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, tasting the honey of the nectar of the Caitanya-caritämrta. So anybody who has any reflections, discussions they want to have, whatever, please, feel free. Hey Gopal. Gopal Roy, that sterling preacher in the Wales Yatra.
He says, Dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for another delightful reading session. I have a reflection, if I may.
Please, please. We're all on the edge of our chairs.
I find it fascinating how Lord Chaitanya would think about different ways to drown the populace in love of God according to time, place, and circumstance. Nice to bear this in mind when we are thinking up innovative ways to spread Krishna consciousness.
Yes. Srila Prabhupada operated on a principle. That principle was you judge a thing by the result. We're not attached to the results for ourselves, but we are attached to bringing people to the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaurnitai, and Radha and Krishna, and the holy name of the Lord, Krishna Prasadam. Harinam Sankirtan. So that's it. It's wonderful. Thank you, Gopal Roy. When Prabhupada went back to India with his Western devotees, there were some big-time so-called spiritual authorities who met him in different places, and particularly one group in Hyderabad. And they were very upset with Prabhupada. They said, you were ruining the Hindu Dharma by associating with Westerners and bringing them in and giving them Brahmin threads and sannyas. So Prabhupada wasn't talking just, theoretically. He was experiencing it himself when he came back from India. But he very, very humbly, actually, when he was in public doing lectures, he was like a tiger on fire. But sometimes when he was in his room and these rascals would come and surround him, there was one in particular, one of Srila Prabhupada's secretaries at the time. He told me the story that Prabhupada, once there was a group of, looked like very high-level persons came to see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada sent him, his secretary, out of the room. But his secretary couldn't, so he peeked through the window where the drapes were parted, and he saw what was going on. And they surrounded Prabhupada, and they all of them started chastising him one at a time about what he was doing and how it was ruining the Hindu culture. And Prabhupada just stood there with his palms like this and took it all in and didn't say a word back to them. And one by one, they just stopped. And they just kind of filed out of the room and left Prabhupada there. And according to this, of course, I don't know if this is absolutely true. There may be a little, hamming it up of his, well, hamming it up, that's not a very good expression. There may have been a little exaggeration in the way he has explained it to me, but he said Prabhupada was chuckling to himself when they left. He was in ecstasy, seeing how much effect his preaching was having. One time Prabhupada said, if you are effective preachers, then there will be people who are against you. If you're not effective, then everybody will like you. Of course, it doesn't mean that we want people not to like us, or it's not that we will do anything to make everybody like us, but rather we have to tell the truth, simple and pure, what the human society needs. Now it's coming to such a crucial inflection point. And reform is necessary, big time. And because of the age of quarrel, everyone's disagreeing with everyone about everything. So we know one thing, that these books are distributing Krishna consciousness. They're increasing the numbers of devotees all over the world. When Prabhupada left, there were, I don't know, maybe, I know there were exactly 108 temples or centers or farms or, communities. And now there's over 800 in that short number of years. And the kirtans, of course, now nothing's happening externally, apparently, according to from the pandemic, the adjustments that everyone's having to make. But still, I'm just hearing, just the last few days I've heard some wonderful stories and had some pictures sent to me from London, Shyam Kishore and Antoine, and they're calling people They have big lists of people that they've met over the years, and they're calling them and sending out to them books, little packages of books, and they're doing really big. They're distributing a lot of books. They're collecting donations for the books. And the preaching is going on. And same, I heard from Australia, one person said that the people are more interested than before. And also from Hungary, I had another devotee, a disciple of mine, tell me, Rajaloka, she's telling me how so many people are coming and asking really nice questions and wanting to know, how to think about things and what to do, how to act, how not to lose their happiness. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us, wonderful. Just like Lord Chaitanya, he devised the means. He took sannyas, so everybody would bow down to him, and they all got the supreme benefit because they were bowing down to Krishna. Even though he was acting as a Vaishnava devotee, sannyasi. So there's no discrimination. There's no discrimination in who can distribute love of God. Anyone can go, like we have Arabai here in the Haven. He goes out not every day, but most every days, many days a week. He goes out and he takes his madanga, and he takes a mat, he sits down, puts a little basket out, chants Hare Krishna, gives out books, answers questions, and he comes back glowing like a light bulb. It's amazing. And Prabhupada said, if you just do these activities, regularly, whether they be big and extravaganza type festivals and special events and these things, just anybody tries best regularly and consistently. Just like all I'm doing is reading Prabhupada's books now. I'm getting old and I'm almost retired, and not very many things I can do until I get these surgeries that I'm supposed to have, and who knows what's going to happen. Who knows? But just by reading every day without fail, except for that time I was in the bed and not well, Krishna does everything. Krishna does everything. Hare Krishna. There are no impediments. What else?
Something from Gopi Chandra Devi Dasi.
Well, Hare Krishna, Gopi Chandra, long time no hear.
She says, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. You were reading how everyone was converted except for the Mayavadis. They couldn't be convinced. So what hope is there for them to go back to Godhead?
Well, we're just about to hear how he converted them. He said that just before he converted them. And then he converted them. There's hope for everyone. But we're in the Kali Yuga. It is the age of quarrel and dissension and quarrel and fighting and argument and discontent and inability to get along with one another. That's it. That's all pervading everywhere in the material world. But so it's our duty to take Krishna consciousness seriously, and develop loving relationships between ourselves, and see the good qualities in others, not look for the faults. This material world is full of faults, and if you look hard enough, you'll find them everywhere. And therefore, when you die, you'll have a whole basket of faults to bring to the Lord as your offering. So we should avoid finding faults in others, and we should just give them these books, give them the holy name, give them Krishna Prasadam, and be Krishna conscious ourselves so that we can spread Krishna consciousness, just by our the happiness that we feel, the relief that we feel from being Krishna conscious. Hare Krishna.
Something from Bhakta Charlie.
Hey Bhakta Charlie, Hare Krishna.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question. Recently I've heard that impersonalism is not just a philosophy, but an attitude we can have even as devotees, to be impersonal in our dealings and activities. Where do impersonal tendencies come from, and how can we avoid them?
Everyone who came to this material world to enjoy the body and the mind, the material body and mind, are more or less, in some degree or another, impersonalists. That's why we came to this material world. Anybody who thinks that they're the body are actually impersonalists, because we're not the body. But if we derive our sense of security and our happiness from sense gratification, from just gratifying the body and gratifying the mind, without a sense of our spiritual identity and devotional service to Krishna, to God, then we are, to one degree or another, impersonalist. And to the degree that we can accept without argument the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the fact that every one of us is a part and parcel of Krishna. This is what Krishna taught Arjuna. Yajgatva na punarmoham evam yasasi pandava yena bhutanya sheshani drakshasya anyato mayi. When you have received this knowledge, Krishna said, then you will no longer fall into illusion. Because, why? Because you will see that all living beings are but a part of the Supreme Living Being, or in other words, that they're mine. So this is what we have to learn to see through knowledge. The soul, the spiritual being, the consciousness. The similar traits that all living beings have. And when you actually are seeing like that, then you'll see a spiritual being in the body of a wolf or a chipmunk or a squirrel or any living being, a bear. You know, they all have ears, they all have eyes, they all have noses of different kinds and tongue, and just like us. But they have no sense. They're wild animals. And we're domesticated animals until we become Krishna conscious. So that's it. We have to see through the eyes of the knowledge. The knowledge of Krishna consciousness is not just information content that we cram into us, that we don't have, and then we cram into us, and we fill out a paper or pass a test and get some letters after our names and make a big show that we are something special and lord it over others for self-aggrandizement and sense gratification. No, the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, our spiritual identity and Krishna, material energy, laws of nature, how it's all working, and we learn to see all living beings with an equal eye. The other day, somebody showed a little video about, there's a locust. You know, locust is a kind of a insect, and they're predators. They come and they just eat everything. In the Bible, there were a couple of very heavy plagues of locusts. It's not auspicious, actually, when a very big swarm of locusts come. They just wipe everything out. They eat all the plants and the vegetables and the grains and everything. They just eat like a swarm of locusts. That's what they do. That's what these locusts do for a living, you know. But if you look at them really carefully, you'll see they've got these little eyes and these little feelers. Prabhupada made a joke the other day. I was listening to him and he was talking about a mosquito. The mosquito is such a tiny living entity, but he's got this nozzle coming out of his nose. And he's got this gift. He can, if he lands on a skin, just in a second, split second, he can put that nozzle inside and fill up their whole body with blood. If you let him, that just for a second, 1-2 seconds. Prabhupada said, they may be able to create a 747, wonderful machine, but they cannot create one mosquito. And the mosquito can fly on a dime and buzz here and there, land on you, and suck your blood without you even practically knowing it. So he said, therefore, the mosquito was superior to the 747 in some ways. All the living beings have their specialty, their special, mystic power. The vultures can fly miles in the sky, and they can see way in the earth, and they can see just a rodent, and they can swoop down, or they can see a dead body. If it's finished, then they can swoop down and eat it. So they've got these powers. The fish can detect when there's a predator coming from a long ways away because it's the water. The water's sending waves, ripples of waves, and they have these skins that can detect these things. When the big tsunami came in, where was that? Southeast Asia somewhere. Malaysia, Tunisia, yeah. Indonesia, yeah. Hundreds of thousands of people died. It was tsunami. It just came and whoop, what? But all the animals, they understood what was happening and they went to the higher ground. And all the human beings got wiped out. Many of the animals escaped to higher ground because they had a perception that the humans didn't have. That doesn't mean that we think that they're superior, or that we should become animals. It just means if we learn to see all living beings as a part of Krishna with their own unique abilities, and then we can offer respects, proper respects to everyone. Then we become happy. But Krishna, he's so kind that even we like to argue. So he creates all these far out arguments, all these different philosophical systems that allow the human beings to argue one against another. But the Vaishnavas, as Vaishnavas, we're not interested in those things, arguing. Someone wants to defeat us in arguments, give us the paper, I'll sign it, go away. Let me chant Hare Krishna and be happy in devotional service, worship the deities, and hear the Caitanya-caritämrta with other devotees, chant and dance in ecstasy. Rupa Goswami did that. Some big Kaviraj, Digvijay, has been going around defeating all the great big philosophers, and he had become a Digvijay. Digvijay means, great defeater of other philosophies. So he came to Rupa Goswami and he said, "What do you want?" He said, "I want to argue. I want to debate you." He said, "Really? Why?" "Because I want to show that I'm superior to you." And he said, "What do you want? What can I do?" "I have a paper here you can sign." So Rupa said, "First we'll debate, and then you sign paper if you're defeated." Prabhupada said, we don't have to debate. You're superior. He just signed it. But Jiva Goswami was listening, and he said, "What happened in there?" He said, "What? Well, your uncle, he signed a paper. He was defeated. So He said, "Really? What did you argue about?" And then Jiva Goswami thrashed him philosophically, just thrashed him. But then Rupa Goswami heard about it, and he said, "This isn't very nice. We're not into arguing. Just get out of here." And he kind of didn't allow Jiva to stay around him for some time. Finally, Sanatana Goswami found where he was and begged Rupa Goswami to take him back. These are not easy to understand, the dealings and workings of pure devotees of Krishna. They only have other people's welfare at heart. Anything else?
From Vilas Manjari Dasi.
Hare Krishna Vilas Manjari. Haribo. It must be late over there, or early. I don't know. So far away, Sydney.
She says, "Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances."
Jai, Hare Krishna.
What an ecstatic reading. Thank you. When in all the readings of Srimad Bhagavatam have we heard of such a merciful incarnation that inundates the whole world in love of Godhead, including those who are trying to avoid it? And Srila Prabhupada perfectly following this mood of preaching in a way that is not static and always dynamic, and giving us complete faith that this movement will continue to spread and catch all in the Lord's loving network.
Yes, very nice realizations. And on that, I would say that these purports Prabhupada explained to us are his transcendental ecstasies. And so, because all of his works are ecstatic, but this is one of the reasons why we read this excerpt from the Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, how Lord Chaitanya felt about the Caitanya-caritämrta, because it is just so extremely special and ecstatic. And yes.
She has a question also.
Please.
She says, quote, "My name will be known in every town and village," unquote. Could you please explain this prediction a little further? Generally, we don't introduce Lord Chaitanya initially to new people.
Well, when I was growing up in Northern California, a small village in Northern California, in the 1950s and early 60s, I had never even heard of the name of Krishna. Had never heard the word Krishna. Had no idea what it meant. And now, the name of Krishna is everywhere, practically. At least so many more people know about Krishna. So it's like it said in the reading today. Prabhupada said that sometimes the Ganges River overflows during the rainy season, and he said this is an indication that the inundation, the flood, the tsunami of love of God flows from Mayapur and will eventually inundate the whole world. But we should understand that, the Prabhupada told us that the Krishna consciousness movement would be extant in human society for about 10,000 years. So, I haven't heard this anywhere exactly put like this, but it's a fact that Prabhupada did say it would be here for 10,000 years. So it means it's going to take a long time for the Krishna consciousness movement to inundate, to come to its peak of influence in the world. We can't imagine what it's going to be like 2,000 years from now. Look at all the changes that have happened in the last just 500 years. What to speak of 5,000 years. So when we think of, the Krishna consciousness movement inundating the whole world, and realize that it's only been 500 years since Lord Chaitanya's appearance, and already it's spread in so many places. And then just extrapolate. If we continue to do the right thing and continue to chant Hare Krishna, and now there's a big, pandemic, but more devotees are getting on the phones and on the internet and calling people and giving them books. And, as the Kali Yuga progresses, those who are innocent, and this is the real point, Prabhupada said we should look for those who are innocent, and faithful. They have they believe in God, and just look for those persons, invest our energy there, and keep doing it regularly and steadily, and then it will spread to every town and village. Another way of looking at it is that Lord Chaitanya didn't leave India. So many people in India think that Lord Chaitanya was just talking about India. They couldn't think that it meant the whole world. They wouldn't even leave India because they thought if they went outside of India, they would be fallen immediately. They would get into the association of the Mlechas and Yavanas and become fallen. That's why they were so shocked when Prabhupada brought back genuine Vaishnava devotees of the Lord with all kinds of bodies all over the world. So this is the prediction of Lord Chaitanya, and just as Krishna told Arjuna, showed him the universal form, and showed him how actually the battle was already won. So Lord Chaitanya said, this movement will spread to every town and village, and we should take that to be true. And we should know that because he said it, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself, it will happen. It's just a matter of who he's going to give the credit to. We want to give all the credit to him, but he wants to give all the credit to us. So anyone who takes part in this movement in any shape or form will get the full benefit. And eventually go back to be with Lord Chaitanya and Radha and Krishna. Hare Krishna.
From Rati Manjari.
Haribol Rati.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for this nectarian reading. So amazing to hear the activities of Sri Sri Panchatattva, distributing love of Godhead by dancing and chanting and tasting it themselves. I found it especially touching to hear Srila Prabhupada defend his disciples, his boys and girls, and even stating that the girls are equally good preachers as their God brothers. It's so clear how much he loves all of us, and that feels wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing it out, Radhi. Very wonderful. And that's the test of having equal vision. Judge a thing by the result. What is that? Can't remember the thing Bengali. There's a Bengali phrase that means judge a thing by the result. Thanks for that nice realization. Reflection. What else? Okay, we'll stop there. Hare Krishna. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinda ki jai. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo, the nectarian ocean, tsunami of Lord Chaitanya's mercy is spreading all over the world. Let us swim and drown in that ocean. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. See you tomorrow, same place, same time, same scripture. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Haribo.